Hey guys, Desktop Philosophy here, and I'm back with my second video in the series, and we're going to take a look at ancient religions. Obviously, I'm on this website, ancient.eu, and we're going to take a look at just opening with some of the things they have to say. I liked this quote. If you watched the last video, you may have noticed a different operating system in Windows 10 now. It's actually the same laptop, just a dual boot. So let's get right into it. So we talked about last time how the development of consciousness of human beings led to the need for explanation of the world around us, right? So there were obviously some people who initially decided to or attempted to use sort of pseudo-scientific reasoning, which I mean I can't imagine, and obviously nobody's recorded this long ago, to explain the world around them, but they weren't successful because of technological, um, you know, technology wasn't quite, up there yet, obviously, because it's the ancient world. So the technology that we have today, that we use in scientific measurement and analysis, was not present, and so many early reasoners were highly unsuccessful. Like, for example, Aristotle. The world does not, in fact, go around the sun. Or the world does go around the sun. The sun does not, in fact, go around the world. Sorry. So, right, into early religion. So, what did people think that gods looked like? Well, initially you might think, well, why does that really matter? What does it matter what the god looks like? Well, this is because religion was used to educate the masses, right? It was always the pretense for which education took place long ago, up until the even modern days with uh, with the slow death of Catholic schools. But religion was developed, right, to explain the world around them. And so, if you're explaining the idea that there are gods who have made and control the world around you, then you need to give them some sort of image, right? And that's why I like this quote. Mortals suppose that the gods are born and have clothes and voices and shapes like their own. But if oxen and horses and lions had hands or could paint with their hands, and fashion work as men do, horses would paint horse-like images of gods, and oxen-like ones, and each would fashion bodies like their own. The Ethiopians consider the gods flat-nosed and black. The uh, Thracians, I don't know, blue-eyed and red-haired. So obviously, we create gods in our own image. It's very simple-minded if you know you assume that God is like, if you are Christian, you assume God is this big white guy with a nice big beard. Yeah, no, probably not. I mean, if God created man in his own image, then he would in fact be black, because the first humans were in Africa, and they were probably of a very dark skin shade. I'm sure there's research on that, but anyway, right? We know that our earliest ancestors came from Africa, and so if God did create us, Adam and Eve were black, not white. Anyway, sorry for that little bit of heresy. We create gods in our own image. So this sort of opens up a kind of like, well, if we're not really sure what gods look like, but we attribute a specific aesthetic to them, a design from ourselves, then what other things have we been attributing to them that, weren't necessarily really there? We just sort of like assumed that. And that question, sort of ends very badly if you're trying to cling to a religion. Unless, of course, you adopt a more enlightened view of religion, but I'm sure we'll get to that to a much later date. Anyway, so we've developed these gods, and they are what explain everything. So the the earliest religion, the earliest civilizations all had religions. So let's try Sumerian religion. Okay, so the Sumerians initially adopted a polytheistic religion, of course, and they had their impressions of what their gods look like, all obviously human form, sort of. Um, yeah, I don't know what I was expecting to look at for this, so we'll just go back to the desktop. Right. So, okay, let me just set this up for you. Um, so the early religions, again, create gods in their own image. Gods in their own image, right? And that opens up, right? We already mentioned what else did we arbitrarily? I have no idea if I spelled that correctly. Please feel free to make fun of me if I did. I am a terrible speller, but you know what I mean. What else did we arbitrarily attribute as aspects of gods? I mean, we can say at this point that we've pretty much made them up, unless you cling on to the the god doesn't look like anything. It appears in whatever form the god desires. That's fine. All right, we'll continue with that hypothesis. So, but that's a difficult concept to explain to large masses, so we attribute physical forms to these gods, and they usually are humans. Now, the Greek gods, which we'll get into later, were capable of taking on any form, and so they recognized that. So, next, what do we do with these gods? Well, these gods and the idea of these gods gave a few people a lot of power. So, the early priests, right? What did the early priests do? They were the ones who explained what the gods did to the masses, and they were the ones who educated the masses. Whether on manners of helpful farming advice, or education as to the meaning of the stars and early astrology, and origin theories and myths, and that brings me to what I wanted to get into. So priests told myths. They told mythology. They told mythology to explain things to the people. This is the purpose of religion. But the fact that they told these myths, told myths, and I don't mean this to mean like they told lies. They told allegorical, pseudo-allegorical stories and ideas through stories in a way to educate the population. But the problem with this is a lot of people took what they were saying much more literally than it was meant to, because of their own, whether it was the poor explanations by the priests or the fact that they were just too mentally incapacitated to truly understand what the priests were trying to give to them. But in any case, they very strictly took a lot of the myths as to be true. More so actually in later religions, which you may find odd, but like especially Christianity, the the people like didn't get a lot of times that there were just morals portrayed through these myths, stories, the Bible. They thought that there was a literal meaning that was meant to be gotten from it. But again, later. But these early priests had power. Power. Now, this is going to start some of the internal conflict of societies, right? So societies were developed. Let's backtrack here. Societies were developed for the protection and sort of early economic improvement of groups of human beings, right? And the rulers of these societies were the most physically intimidating, right? So early, yes, rulers were the were physically intimidating. Jesus Christ, I'm sure I'm spelling half of this stuff wrong. Earliest rulers were physically intimidating, and they were the ones who, made the people of the clans and tribes and whatever feel safe because, again, they were physically intimidating. They killed lions with their bare hands. Maybe not, but you get the point. Now, early priests challenged this. Early priests had the power of explanation. They used their minds to gain a power over the people. And this becomes very dangerous because physical power is absolute. It's tangible. If somebody can beat me up, then he can beat me up, whether I'm smarter than him or not. He can beat me up, or whether he likes me or not. And these things are like it's difficult to remove his ability to be physically stronger than I am. But mental superiority is a much different thing because you can only bully so many people at a time. Maybe you can beat one person up. You can beat two people up. But three, four, five eventually is going to be a number where you can't beat them all up, and so you lose your physical intimidation. And that was the limitation of tribes. But these early priests had a mental power. They could speak and they could win the hearts and minds of the people, and they could sway them with their superior knowledge, or the appearance of their superior knowledge. And this again, this is going to be dangerous. Priests rival the uh, physical, physically intimidating rulers. And this will come much later in society, as like even as late as the English revolutions, between obviously Henry VIII and Pope, and this will be a struggle throughout human history. Is the struggle between the priests most of the time, who were the more mentally capable, and the physical rulers who had the militaries and the might and the power, the physical power. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for this episode, right? So we covered the fact that early religions created gods in their own images. Early created gods in their own image. Early religions had gods. Had gods created in the image of the people. Sorry, I should have said that way the first time. Anyway, early religions had created gods in the image of people. What else do we arbitrarily attribute to as aspects of these gods? Again, well, we arbitrarily attributed an image to them, so could we not have also arbitrarily attributed a lot of other things? Yes, we did. That's the answer, but spoiler alert. Anyway, and then early priests told morals, or conveyed morals through myths, and they had a mental power because the people had a fear and a sort of a love through fear of the understanding which it appeared to them someone else had, and a connection with the control over the entire world, a connection with the gods that the individual working man did not have. And so priests won the respect and power, and which would eventually come to rival the physical kings and rulers and clan leaders, who were the big buff guys who won the battles. And I guess that pretty much does it for this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in, and hope you see it. Hope to see you watching for the next episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to make fun of my spelling errors if I did make any. I'm not really sure because I'm terrible at spelling.